Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and those of indeterminate genders. I'm Zombo.
And I'm Shaderaygun, and welcome back to Bad Fiction Monday, because it's always Monday when you read bad fiction. Today, we have a special treat for everyone, the infamous story, The Eye of Argon. Tell me, Zombo, do you know of the Eye of Argon?
Only nothing you've told me. So, no.
As I thought. The Eye of Argon was written in 1970 by Jim Thies, is what we said?
Tease,
Thies.
I think.
Jim Thies. And I believe it was submitted to some science fiction and fantasy fanzines.
Oh,
Now,
so this is equivalent to Lovecraft's old work.
Sort of, but the difference is Jim was 16 when he wrote this. And,
oh, boy.
Now, listeners, I will let you know, I don't want to be too harsh on Jim and the Eye of Argon. Namely because he's dead, for one thing. But second off, unlike a lot of the fiction we'll read on here, there's a bit of a heart and there's a bit of an effort to the Eye of Argon. It's not good, but it's clearly the sign of somebody who is trying, but just isn't experienced enough. It's got a lot of weird purple prose, some very awkward dialogue. It's got some plot holes, but...
Oh, man. On that note, we should read some of my fan fiction from when I was a teenager.
Oh, dear God.
I'll send you a link to some of it, see if you want to read it.
But the point being is this is, the effort of an amateur. And it's at least an interesting story, a cohesive one. The Eye of Argon is a fantasy story told in the manner of Conan the Barbarian. It's that sort of sword and sorcery style. And at least goes from originality. But the Eye of Argon was infamous for decades. It would get read at fantasy and science fiction conventions and stuff like that. And it was sort of a very early... It was sort of The Room before The Room was a thing. It would get read at conventions in front of audiences. People would laugh. There'd be recurring jokes. There was one thing where people would take turns reading it, and you had to trade off whenever you laughed and could no longer keep a serious face. This was a very popular thing back before the internet. This may arguably be the first, really, what's the right word? Really popular bad piece of fiction. I said...
Man.
It's
well,
not...
I could make a really edgy joke here, but I think I'm just really getting interested in reading this. Do you want to try that swap-off thing? Every time we cringe or laugh, we have to swap?
But the dialogue is so good, and I want to hear your voice acting in it.
All right. Okay.
We're not going to finish this in one sitting, because this has 7.5 chapters and a lost ending. And some of the chapters are small, and some of them are not. This is a novella. Depending on what format you get it in, it can go upwards of 76 pages. So we're going to read to the end of chapter 3.5, I feel like. Mainly because chapter 4 is really long. I should let everyone know, I got introduced to this story through another internet personality, Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, the video game reviewer of Zero Punctuation fame. Read this story...
Rest in peace, Yahtzee.
He's still alive.
Who was it that died? I thought Yahtzee died of cancer. Oh,
Total Biscuit. No, Yahtzee just lives in America, which is arguably worse nowadays.
Yeah.
Anyways, he read it with his friend. He read it with his friend Gabriel Morton for their Let's Drown Out series, and what an introduction it was. Are you ready to read The Eye of Argon, Zombo?
I am unironically salivating right now, Shade.
Let's do it. The weather-beaten trail wound ahead into the dust-racked climbs of the barren land, barren spelled with one R, which dominates large portions of the Norgolian Empire.
Already bastardizing tenses right there. That's a good start.
Age-worn hoofprints smothered by the shifting sands of time shone dully against the dust-splattered crust of Earth. Jesus, these are long sentences. The tireless...
Not even properly... oh my god, look at the lack of punctuation in that, too. We're now implying that worn is... no, age is the name of that? Age-worn hoofprints? Is age wearing hoofprints? Okay, I think I'm getting a little bit too pedantic right now.
Our audience can't see the grammar after all. Unless they choose to look up the story themselves. It's quite easy
You know what? I think going forward, I'm going to start putting the original sources into the descriptions.
That's a good idea.
So take a look in the description below if you want to read the story for yourself.
The tireless sun casts its parching rays of incandescence from overhead, halfway through its daily revolution. So the sun was high in the sky. Thank you.
Oh my god, he is really trying to be flowery.
He's trying.
He can't spell half the words he's using, but my god, is he trying.
That's my thing. I didn't want to assault this too much because he's trying.
Yeah.
Small rodents scampered about, occupying themselves in the daily accomplishments of their dismal lives. Dust sprayed over 3 heaving mounts in blinding clouds, while they bore the burdensome cargoes of their struggling overseers.
So, the mounts are... okay.
Camels.
Prepare to embrace your creators in the Stygian haunts of hell, barbarian.
Gasped the first soldier.
Only after you have kissed a fleeting stead of death, wretch.
Well, I should let you know, Zombo, and it's up to you. This is our main protagonist, Gringir, or Gringir. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, I can do the sexy baritone consistently.
Well, I was gonna say he is a barbarian.
Alright.
Yeah.
Only after you have kissed a fleeting stead of death, wretch.
Returned Gringir. A sweeping blade of flashing steel riveted from the massive barbarians without a possessive hide enameled shield as his rippling right arm thrust forth, sending
riveted?
A steel... Riveted.
Why would he use riveted as the verb there?
This was the days before the internet, so, you know...
He would still have a thesaurus or a dictionary.
Do you really think a 17-year-old fantasy writer cracked that stuff open?
I mean, considering the fact that he's using the word riveted rather than shot from or swung or glimmered.
I'm 90% certain he saw this word used somewhere else and just decided he'd use it.
That is literally the opposite of what he's trying to say. Like, rivets don't move. They especially don't move quickly. Oh, that hurt my brain.
See, I can't decide if he's describing a blade bouncing off of the shield or Gringir's blade coming out from behind the shield to stab forward.
Oh, that's it too, because he's... Oh, why? I can get that they're trying to explain that he's got the shield too. But, like, there's so many less horrible ways to do that. Why didn't the dying soldier give, like, one final attack that he deflected easily with his hide enameled shield?
Listen... This is the thing of the Eye of Argon. The question you'll ask is, why didn't you explain that more simply or more better? I mean, why is this soldier's last gasp, prepare to embrace your creators in the Stygian haunts of hell, barbarian? when he could have just said, "Go to hell." I'm going to repeat this sentence and see if you, the viewers or listeners, can understand it. Tell us in the comments below. A sweeping blade of flashing steel riveted from the massive barbarian's hide-enameled shield as his rippling right arm thrust forth, sending a steel-shod blade to the hilt into the soldier's vital organs. The disemboweled mercenary crumbled from his saddle and sank to the clouded sward. Sward? Is that a word?
I think so. I think it's just one of those flowery words that nobody uses anymore.
Sprinkling the parched dust with crimson droplets of escaping life fluid. He's after our precious bodily fluids.
When we were reading our previous episode, you can go check that out. I'll link it in the doobly-doo. I was amused. This one, I'm just confused.
It's
like, legitimately, I'm so confused right now.
Gringor stabbed the guy. And he fell over dead, and he's bleeding on the sand.
Yeah, no, I get that much, but, like, the entire action scene there made no sense.
The enthused barbarian swiveled about, his shock of fiery red hair tossing robustly in the humid air currents as he faced the attack of the defeated soldier's fellow in arms.
"Damn you, barbarian!"
shrieked the soldier as he observed his comrade in death. A gleaming scimitar smote a heavy blow against the renegade's spiked helmet, bringing a heavy cloud over the accordion's misting brain. Oh yeah, the bad guys are their name is their city of or country of origin. They're the accordions. It's spelled with an E, but it comes off like a musical instrument.
So this guy's not a barbarian. He's some weird ass Mongol.
He acts
hide
like
armor, a scimitar. He's mounted.
But he's
this
called
is either a
barbarian.
Mongol or a Hun. This is not a barbarian.
Look, maybe he's up there in class levels. This could be a level 15 barbarian. And I'm using D&D
I'm not even talking like D&D. I'm talking like the way this guy is being described, the way he's being like outfitted. This is like Asian ass, like Mongol Hun type gear.
Well, excuse me if the barbarian doesn't follow your rules.
Yes, I am very upset about that.
Shaking off the effects of the pounding blow to his head, Gringor brought down his scarlet streaked edge against the soldier's crudely forged hauberk, clanging harmlessly to the left side of his opponent. Oh, no, Gringor's the accordion. The guy smacked him in the head with a scimitar.
Oh, okay, yeah, that.
I just remember that someone was named the Accordions. The soldier's steed. I think that's supposed to be stead. It's supposed to be steed, but he said stead. The soldier's stead whinnied as he directed the horse back from the driving blade of the barbarian.
Wait. This whole time they've been using the words steed and mount. It's just a horse?
I thought it was a camel.
I was expecting just like some sort of fantasy creature. Like he was being so careful not to use the word horse.
Oh, we're not. This isn't a very high fantasy setting. There's some magic users, but it's not like anyone's throwing fireballs exactly. They've still got horses.
Yeah, but they like. Am I weird to think this? Like he was so carefully avoiding saying mounts. I'm like, okay, I'm expecting some sort of like basic fantasy creature. Like one of those like lizard mounts that you get in like basic fantasy.
This person who wrote this was 17 years old. I don't think they knew like literary suspense like that. I think they just forgot to say it was a horse for so long.
Oh. Okay.
Gringor leashed his mount forward as the hoarsely piercing battle cry of his wilderness-bred race resonated from his grinding lungs.
I guess I made a good call, or you made a good call changing his voice.
A twirling blade bounced harmlessly from the mighty thief's buckler as his rolling right arm cleft upward, sending a foot of blinding steel ripping through the Cimmerian's exposed gullet.
So he's a thief, not a barbarian?
He's both.
We multi-classing now.
Honestly, I've read this story before, and I've heard it read. He is a multi-class thief barbarian, judging by what he does later. A gasping gurgle from the soldier's writhing mouth as he tumbled to the golden sand at his feet and wormed agonizingly in his deathbed. He stabbed him and he fell to the ground. There you go. That was the gist of that.
Honestly, I would actually not be super against rewriting this. Though I feel like it would take away from the magic of this.
Just a little bit. Like I said,
like having a chaotic, stupid character just murdering people, who's totally a barbarian and a thief. I think there's promise here. Like, this is clearly, you said it was written in the 70s.
In the 70s, like I said, this is Conan the Barbarian inspired. If you read original Conan the Barbarian and stuff, he's just like a pirate. He goes around and he loots places.
But like the way he's describing it too, this is like, the first thing I want to do is reference D&D, but this is predating D&D, isn't it?
I
think the first editions of D&D came out early 80s, didn't they?
No, first edition was in the 70s, or at least
Okay.
Okay, first edition of D&D was 1974, and the game it's based off of, Chainmail, is 1971. So it's predating it, but only by a handful of years. It was more in the same time period.
And so it's possible that he probably knew nothing about D&D?
Probably. Almost definitely. Like I said, this is more based off of, like, Conan the Barbarian.
This is very, I can feel the Conan off of this. Like, the way he described him was basically just a gingered Arnold. On that note...
Yeah, what was the other one?
Gringer's getting a new voice now.
Robert E. Howard. It's very Robert E. Howard. He's the writer of Conan the Barbarian and many other things. Gringer's emerald green orbs glared lustfully at the wallowing soldier struggling before his chestnut-swirled mount. His scowling voice reverberated over the dying form in a tone of mocking mirth.
You city-bred dogs should learn not to antagonize your better.
You sure you can do that voice?
Get to the chopper.
Raining.
Give me a couple lines. We'll get there.
I believe you. Although doing a bad Arnold impersonation almost feels appropriate.
It does. I mean, I don't do a good Arnold, but I'll have a little bit less really terrible.
Reining his weary mount ahead, Gringer, who's
Ooh,
now
look
lowercase,
at that, all lowercase now.
Yeah. Resumed his journey to the Norgolian city of Gorzam, hoping to discover wine, women, and adventure to boil the wild blood coursing through his savage veins. Norgolian sounds like something from Black Clover.
Sisgolion, Brogolion, Norgolion.
That's right. Go watch Black Clover. It's a good anime, listeners.
It's trashy shonen in the best way.
Doesn't do anything new, but everything it does is done well. The trek to Gorzam was forced upon Gringer when the soldiers of Kryn...
Wait. Is it Gorzam or Gorzam?
It just changes.
Oh, this is some CS Goto tier shit.
Well, no. Hear me out. Maybe it's Gorzam there because that is the genitive case, because it's... Or I guess that'd be... Yeah, genitive, to show its possession over the Norgolian city, or something like that. Maybe this is different endings.
I think we're giving this guy way too much credit.
Yes. The trek to Gorzom was forced upon Gringor when the soldiers of Kryn were leashed upon him by a faithless concubine he had wooed. His scandalous activities throughout the Cimmerian city had unleashed throngs of havoc and uproar among its refined patricians, leading them to tack a heavy reward over his head.
He banged a whore and they put a bounty on his head.
It was a very violent banging. He had barely managed to escape through the back entrance of the inn he had been guzzling in, as a squad of soldiers pounced upon him. After spilling
I have never heard that word before.
Pounced?
Pounced?
Well, be prepared to learn a lot. After spilling a spout of blood from the leader of the mercenaries as he dismembered one of the officer's arms, he retreated to his mount to make his way towards Gorzom, rumored to contain hordes of plunder and many young wenches for any man who has the backbone to wrest them away.
Again.
Chapter 2.
He is still avoiding using... He's used the word horse in the entirety of Chapter 1. I mean, he used horse, the adjective, but he only used the word horse once in that entire paragraph, or that entire chapter.
Maybe it's not a horse, it's just a different animal that whinnies.
But no, he said the soldier's stead whinnied as he directed hit the horse back from the driving blade of the barbarian.
Well, maybe Gringor.
It's a horse. That's literally the only time. Oh my god, this is frustrating me more than it should.
Maybe Gringor has a different kind of mount.
Like, clearly this guy has a thesaurus.
Clearly.
You don't have to replace every single word. You know what? Bad writing 101. When you're writing something, you don't have to replace every single simple word with something fancy.
The only time you should really do that is if you're using the same word over and over and over again.
Yeah, like if you're trying to avoid, like, he said this, then he said this. He said this. He spoke this. He declared that. He questioned this.
Yeah, like if you're in a scene with a fire, like a burning building, don't just say fire. Go fire, inferno, blaze,
yeah.
Conflagration.
You don't have to keep using, like, you don't have to avoid saying fire over and over.
But
like, or you don't have to say avoid saying fire at all. Just don't use it every single time.
Don't use it every single time, but don't, like, only use it once and use something else every other time or stuff like that.
There is a middle ground, and it's pretty easy to find it.
Anyways, we've got some more dialogue, and there's something I should let everyone know. A part of the Eye of Argon, one amusing part, is the overuse of the word slut.
Oh, no.
Slut, apparently, in this fantasy setting, is the equivalent of, like, casually calling someone an asshole. Like, hey, asshole, come on over here and join us for this game. No, it's, hey, slut, come on over here and join us for this game. Take a drink every time the word slut comes up. It's quite the experience.
Oh, dear. If this gets demonetized, I'm going to have a heck of a time beeping everything.
Hey, we're past the first minute. That's really the only part they care about. Chapter 2.
I don't know if that's how it works, but okay.
I know you can't swear in the first minute. Chapter 2. Arriving after dusk in Gorzom, Gringor descended down a dismal alley, reining his horse, oh, that got answered, before a beaten tavern.
You know, I'm actually wondering if it's Grinir.
Grinir?
Yeah, like it's a Norse name.
Well, we've gone too far. He's in a desert, though.
It's, you're right, but he's also
a Gringir?
Geared up like a fucking horde.
Grignr? Or
because it reminds me of Gungnir. You know, the Norse Mount of Odin. No, that's not it. But like it reminds me of Gungnir. So I'm wondering if it's Grinir.
Well, I'll tell you what. In honor of Bad Fiction Monday, Let's just go with whatever pronunciation catches our fancy per sentence.
Yeah, sure.
The red-haired giant strode into the dimly lit hostelry, reeking of foul odors and cheap wine. The
fact that that's spelled without a U triggers my Canadian senses.
The air was heavy with
chalking
fumes spewing from smoldering torches. One word. Encased within the den's earthen-packed walls. Thetans, it's one word. Tables were clustered with groups of drunken thieves and cutthroats tossing dice or making love to willing prostitutes. Eyeing a slender female crouched alone at a nearby desk, Grignir advanced, wishing to wholesomely occupy his time. The flickering torches cast weird shafts of luminescence dancing over the half-naked harlot of his choice.
What a terrible word to use there.
Her stringy orchid twines of hair swaying gracefully over the lithe, opaque nose as she raised a half-drained mug to her pale red lips.
Why would he use weird?
I've got a bet for you. Before we go ahead, I want to make a bet with you.
Okay.
How much would you wager? No, tell me. Who do you think is more respectful in their depiction of women? This guy or Frank Miller?
I can't imagine anyone is less respectful than Frank Miller. Please don't disappoint me.
Let's read on.
Oh no.
Glancing upward, the alluring complexion noted the stalwart giant as he rapidly approached. A faint
Did he just describe that woman as just a pretty face, but with big words?
Yeah, pretty much.
Glancing upward, the pretty face. I mean, he said alluring complexion, but that's just the pretty face.
I'll say alluring complexion, I feel like, is a fair, fancy way, if it wasn't for the fact that everything else is so unnecessary. Had that been on an island, that'd be fine.
I don't think so.
A faint glimmer sparked from the pair of deep blue ovals of the amorous female, as she motioned toward Grignir, enticing him to join her. The barbarian seated himself upon a stool at the wench's side, exposing his body, naked save for a loincloth, brandishing a long steel broadsword. Oh my.
How does a loincloth brandish a broadsword?
It's a very good loincloth, but we're not done yet, because it also has an iron spiraled battle helmet and a thick leather sandals to her unobstructed view. I repeat myself, by the way, listeners. A thick leather sandals.
So remember, his lower half is naked, except his loincloth is brandishing a steel broadsword, wearing a battle helmet, and wearing a thick leather sandals.
That loincloth has straps of steel.
That loincloth is geared up.
Thou hast need to occupy your time, barbarian.
That's the girl.
I know.
Oh. Read away again.
Thou hast need to occupy your time, barbarian.
Question the female?
See?
There's a
That's why I did it.
God damn it.
We got Dr. Girlfriend here now.
Okay.
Only if something is worth offering was within my reach,
stated Grignir, as his hands crept to embrace the tempting female, who welcomed him with open willingness.
For where do you come, barbarian? And by what are you called?
Oh wait,
from where do you come, barbarian? And by what are you called?
Gasped the complying wench, as Grignir smothered her lips with the blazing touch of his flaming mouth.
So now he's on fire.
It's getting hot in here.
But please, leave that amazingly geared out loincloth on.
It's pretty amazing. The engrossed Titan ignored the queries of the inquisitive female, pulling her towards him and crushing her sagging nipples to his yearning chest. Without struggle, she gave in, winding her soft arms around the harshly bronzed hide of Grignir, corded shoulder blades, as his calloused hands caressed her firm, protruding busts.
What?
He's touching her breasts.
No, he's not. He's crushing her breasts against his chest. I think he just thought busts is a synonym for buttocks. I'm pretty sure he's grabbing her ass right now.
Who can tell? Honestly.
Like, read that again. He ignored the queries, pulling her towards him, crushing her sagging nipples to his chest. She gave in, wrapping her arms around his body, and his calloused hands caressed her protruding busts. I'm like 80% sure that he thinks bust means ass.
I can see your point. I can also see your point that he just doesn't understand positioning in his own story. And somehow has
Does he not know where breasts are? He is 17.
Well, I was more saying that he didn't realize he wrote that they embraced and pressed against each other, but then he also had her touching her breasts, even though that should be physically impossible.
Yeah, it could be both.
I digress. Continue on.
You make love well, wench.
Admitted Grignir as he reached for the vessel of potent wine his charge had been quaffing. A flying foot...
Wait, no, she was drinking a beer.
I thought they said cheap wine.
No, he was drinking cheap wine, and then... what? Okay, chalking flame, blah, blah, blah. She raised a half-drained mug to her pale red lips.
Look.
Okay, I guess it doesn't really say what was in the mug, but...
Fan theory. She's a half cousin to Jesus, and her ability is to turn beer into wine.
My God.
A flying foot caught the mug Grignir had hold of, sending its blood-red contents sloshing over a flickering crescent. Leashing tongues of bright orange flame to the foot-trodden floor.
So... What?
He dropped the wine.
No, see, I get that. Like, I was actually completely okay with this whole thing. It actually was poetic and flowery in a not stupid way. The last part of that. Leashing tongues of bright orange flame to the foot-trodden floor.
I think he's supposed to say, like, the wine as it's spilling looks orange, and it looks like tongues on fire.
But he just described it as blood red. Did it hit a torch and light on fire? Because I don't think wine is super flammable the way...
No, I think he's saying that, like, you know how, like, if you have, like, cranberry juice or something, and, like, you have it poured in a glass and it's all together, it looks like a deep red. But if you pour out just a little bit, it becomes kind of pinkish.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between blood red and bright orange.
Magic.
Like, I legitimately, like, I'm just like, I was getting ready to say, wow, this was actually a really well-written paragraph. I mean, paragraph is, these are single lines of sentences, but that last line ruined it.
Prepare for more disappointment.
Remove yourself, sirrah. The wench belongs to me.
Blabbered a drunken soldier, too far consumed by the influences of his virile brew to take note of the superior size of his adversary. And in more ways than one.
I mean, I don't think that drunken soldier has a loincloth that's geared as well as Grignir's. That
loincloth could rival the utility belt of Batman. Let's be honest.
I mean, does Batman's utility belt have a sword of its own? Actually, it might. Does it have a pith helmet?
Probably not. I can't imagine he's got the bat pit helmet in there. Grignir lithely bounded from the startled female, his face lit up to an ashen red ferocity, and eyes locked in a searing feral blaze toward the swaying soldier.
Now see, that was okay. I had no problems with that one.
The hell with you, braggart!
Bellowed the angered accordion as he hefted his finely honed broadsword. Wow, that is a powerful loincloth.
His loincloth's finely honed broadsword.
That is broadswords are huge.
Yeah, how the hell is this guy... How's he hanging a broadsword from his loincloth?
I'm wondering if he has like a scabbard that's attached to the loincloth, but it's just not clear.
Like, how big is this guy that he has a scabbard that can contain a broadsword attached to his loincloth?
Maybe he's a half giant.
Or maybe this guy can't describe the guy's lower body.
I mean, look, all we know right now is he's mostly naked, he has muscles, and he has red hair.
And a broadsword. And a pith helmet.
The staggering soldier clumsily reached towards the pommel of his dangling sword. But before his hands ever touched the oaken hilt, a silvered flash was slicing the heavy air.
He really likes to describe the weapon swings as silvered flashes.
It's fancy.
That's I think the third time he's described it that way.
The thews of the savage's lashing right arm bulged from the glistening bronzed hide as his blade bit deeply into the soldier's neck, lopping off the confused head of his senseless tormentor. Loping off the confused head of his senseless tormentor. With a nauseating thud, the severed oval toppled to the floor as the segregated torso of Grignir's bovine antagonist swayed, then collapsed in a pool of swirled crimson. I was about to say that was really good use of segregated, but why is he bovine?
And severed oval?
It's a weird way to call a head.
And in what way is this tiny little soldier bovine?
Maybe he's like the new elves in Age of Sigmar who worship cows.
They do not. I mean, they worship a woman, but that's neither here nor there.
It's the story.
For the record, this joke might not age well. Teclis just came back in Age of Sigmar.
In the confusion, the soldiers' fellows confronted Grignir with unsheathed cutlasses, directing toward the latter's scowling makeup.
Oh, hang on. I just remembered something.
What'd you just remember?
Remember earlier I was complaining about how Grignir is totally not a barbarian. He's obviously a Mongol or a Hun.
Yeah?
Part of the reason I said that was because he had a scimitar in that scene. So does he have a finely crafted scimitar and a broadsword? I think
this guy he was fighting had a scimitar, and it just wasn't very clear.
No. The scimitar was caked red with blood.
Yeah, but the scimitar hit him, and he got hit in the head. He was dazed, and then he cut the guy in half.
Yeah, so the scimitar wouldn't have been bloody. He very clearly described the scimitar as being caked with blood.
Well, we did kind of enter in media res, so maybe their fight was just going on for a while, and he had a few cuts.
I'm pretty sure. I think this guy also just doesn't know swords.
Probably. I mean, the bad guys have gone from having scimitars to having cutlasses, which are not the same thing. I don't believe. They're similar, but I don't think they're the same.
No, they're not even similar. They're completely different weapons.
Aren't they both curved blade swords?
Kind of.
I think
cutlasses. Think pirate swords versus traditional raiding Arabic swordsmen.
Yeah, when I think a scimitar, I think like Arabian Nights. When I think a cutlass, I think, pirates and sailors.
Yeah, one's a murder weapon, one's a dueling weapon.
One's way thicker.
Yeah.
Anyways, we got some dialogue.
Okay. Let's lodge the this quarry more carefully.
Roared the victor in a mocking baritone growl as he wiped his dripping blade on the prostrate form and returned it to its scabbard. He does have a scabbard.
I think he's hanging his scabbard halfway down his loincloth.
Oh my.
The fool should have stated... The fool should have shown more prudence. However, you shall rue your actions while rotting in the pits. Stated
one of the sprawled soldier's comrades. Grignir's hand began to remove his blade from its leather housing, but, and I apologize for this is just what's written.
No. This is properly using the word.
But retarded the motion and face of the blades waving before his face.
That's an actual, retarded is a way to say slowing something down.
I know, it's
like flame retardant.
Yeah, just doesn't get used as much nowadays for that reason.
Yeah.
Dismiss your hand from the hilt, barbarian, or you shall find a foot of steel sheathed in your gizzard.
I don't know why, but I was thinking of Aha from Black Clover saying that line.
We can never remember Seke's name. The other day I was calling him Aha, now you're calling him Aha.
It's what he's known for. Grignir weighed his position, observing his plight. Whereupon, with a hyphen for some reason, he took the soldier's advice as the only logical choice. Logic, something barbarians are known for. To attempt to hack his way from his present predicament could only warrant certain death. He was of no mind to bring him upon his own demise if an alternate path presented itself. The will to necessitate his life forced him to yield to the superior force in hopes of a moment of carelessness later upon the part of his captors in which he could effect a more plausible means of escape.
Carelessness.
This is not this barbarian's inner monologue. I refuse to believe he knows this many words.
No. I don't think he knows this.
You may steady your arms and will go without a struggle. Your decision is a wise one, yet perhaps you would have been better off had you forced death.
The soldier's mouth wrinkled to a sadistic grin of knowing mirth as he prodded his prisoner on with his sword point. After an indiscriminate period of marching through slinking alleyways and dim moonlighted streets, the procession confronted a massive
Seraglio, I think.
Seraglio. Seraglio.
That sounds like something. I think that sounds like something that would have a silent G.
Probably. The palace area was surrounded by an iron grating with a lush garden upon all sides.
Jesus Christ, this chapter is long.
Wait till you see the next chapter. The group was admitted through the gilded gateway, and Grignir was led along a stone pathway bordered by plush vegetation, lustfully enhanced by the moon's shimmering rays.
This guy really doesn't know what words mean.
Upon reaching the palace, the group was granted entrance, and after several minutes of explanation, led through several winding corridors to a richly draped chamber. Confronting the group was a short, stocky man seated upon a golden throne.
Hey, it's the Emperor before he revealed himself.
Oh boy. Tapestries of richly draped regal blue silk covered all walls of the chamber, while the steps leading to the throne were plated with sparkling white ivory. The man upon the throne had a naked wench seated at each of his arms, and a trusted advisor seated in back of him. At each corner of the chamber, a guard stood at attention, with upraised pikes supported in their hands, golden chainmail adorning their torsos, and barred helmets emitting scarlet plumes enshrouding their heads. This is the most description we've gotten out of anything so far.
And it's all good.
It's all clear. I understood all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's overly flowery still, but...
Well, except for
clear.
cornweir instead of corner. There's a W.
I mean, that's
instead of
just a misspelling. Like, this is... Like, I'm not going to count the misspelling and the grammar errors. This is a clear paragraph.
My God, he's getting better. The man rose from his throne to the dais surrounding it.
That's not how you spell that.
Dais?
It's A-I-S.
A-I-S? His plush turquoise robe dangled
That's missing an
loosely
E.
from his chunky frame.
Chunky.
It says chunky.
Chunky does not have a second C in it.
Doesn't it?
No.
I don't think it's one of those things I've seen spelled out very often.
Nah, man. Chunky is spelled C-H-U-N-C-K...
You know what? You're right.
C-H-U-N-K-Y.
Now that you say it,
E-Y.
I can see it. The soldiers surrounding Gringir fell to their knees with heads bowed to the stone masonry of the floor in fearful dignity to their sovereign liege.
I love this illustration right here.
The guy with no eyes?
Yeah. This is not a bad drawing. It's intimidating, it's regal. Having no eyes, I don't actually think takes away from that.
This is the guy who will later say my favorite line in the entire story. In all of fiction.
Explain the purpose of this intrusion upon my chateau. Your serenity, resplendent in noble grandeur, we have brought this yokel before you.
The soldier gestured toward Grignir.
For the redress or your all-knowing wisdom in judgment regarding his fate.
For God's sakes, just say, the guard said, gesturing towards Grignir. Don't put parentheses in the middle of your dialogue. This isn't stage
It's
directions.
okay to close quotes. God damn. Down on your knees, lout, and pay proper homage to your sovereign.
Commanded the pudgy noble of Grignir.
By the surly beard of Murphic, Gungnir kneels to no man.
Scowled the massive barbarian.
You dare to deal this blasphemous act to me? You are indeed brave, stranger, yet your valor speaks of... Wow, that was my own fault. Yet your valor smacks of foolishness. Oh my god, okay. I was giving me a minute, I was trying to figure out who was saying this.
I find you to be the only fool sitting upon your pompous throne, enhancing the rolling flaps in your belly in the midst of your elaborate luxury and...
You know, that sounds like a real Arnold Schwarzenegger line.
It does. That's why
Especially
I think one of the reasons I was able to actually easily able to sink into that one.
The soldier standing at Grignir's side smote him heavily in the face with the flat of his sword, cutting short the harsh words and knocking his battered helmet to the masonry with an echoing clang.
He's nuded the loincloth.
The paunchy...
Hold on. Smite him, Centurion! Smite him very roughly!
I love using smote, though. It's a good word.
Smote is a great word.
The paunchy noble's sagging round face flushed suddenly pale, then pastely lit up to a lustrous cherry red radiance. His lips trembled with malicious rage, while emitting a muffled, sibilant gibberish. His sagging flabs rolled like a tub of upset jelly, then compressed as he sucked in his gut in an attempt to conceal his softness. Okay, you know what's the problem with that drawing, that illustration? I realized
that guy is not fat at all.
No, that guy is not fat. That is a very thin man.
Yeah, that's a very sallow man.
Maybe it's the second illustration is supposed to be him for some reason.
Yeah, I think the second illustration looks a bit more like what he was probably trying to get across. Also,
the prince regained...
Also, I had no issues with that paragraph either.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. If flowery.
Yeah, it was flowery, but again, clear.
The prince regained his statue, then spoke to the soldiers surrounding Grignir, his face conforming to an ugly expression of sadistic humor.
Take this uncouth heathen to the Vault of Misery, and be sure that his agonies are long and drawn out before death can release him.
You can't have a palace without a Vault of Misery.
Honestly, if you don't have a Vault of Misery, even in your basic flat, what are you doing with your life?
All the Drukhari got it.
All the elves got it.
All the Keebs got it.
Yeah, burn them all. Never trust an elf. As you wish, sire. Your command shall be heeded immediately.
Answered the soldier on the right of Grignir as he stared into the barbarian's seemingly unaffected face. The advisor seated in the back of the noble slowly rose and advanced to the side of his master, motioning the wenches seated at his sides to remove themselves. He lowered his head and whispered to the noble, "Bros before hoes."
Eminence, the punishment you have decreed will cause much misery to this scum, yet it will only last a short time, then release him to a land beyond the sufferings of the human body. Why not melee him out in one of the subterranean vaults for a few days, then send him to the labor in one of your buried mines? To one such as he, a life spent in the confinement of the Stygian pits will be an infinitely more appropriate and lasting torture.
Hey, appropriate use of the word Stygian.
Yeah, that's a word that doesn't get used very often, and he used it properly.
It's a great one. Great way to describe, like, advanced darkness.
Mm-hmm.
The noble cupped his drooping double chin in the folds of
Oh,
his
you know what?
brimming palm.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. That first image, I think that's the advisor.
I think it is. Meditating for a moment upon the rationality of the counselor's words, then raised his shaggy brown eyebrows and turned toward the advisor, eyes aglow.
As always, Agafind.
Agafind.
Agafind? Yeah, let's go with that.
Agafind is how I've heard it pronounced.
Alright, let's go with that. As always, Agafind, you speak with great wisdom. Your words speak of great knowledge concerning the nature of one such as he.
There's actually your words ring of great knowledge.
What did I say?
Speak.
Oh.
Or say. Saith the
Comma.
king. Unnecessary comma. The noble turned toward the prisoner with a noticeable shimmer reflecting in his frog-like eyes, and his lips contorting to a greasy grin.
You know what? If they're setting up that the advisor is mind controlling him, they're doing a pretty good job at keeping it subtle. Like, am I wrong on that? Like, if he's not, I'll have to rescind that. But like the way they're describing his eyes like glowing and stuff now.
Look, I'll just tell you, Agafind has access to many abilities that ones would consider unnatural.
Is it possible to learn such techniques?
Not from any loincloth.
Okay, so yeah, I'll stand by my statement. The way they're describing him controlling this noble is fairly subtle and well done.
You have more dialogue.
Oh, where am I?
I have decided.
Okay. Yes. I have decided to void my previous decree. The prisoner shall be removed to one of the palace's, no punctuation there, underground vaults. There he shall stay until I have decided that he has sufficiently simmered. Whereupon, he is to be allowed to spend the remainder of his days in labor in one of my mines.
Upon hearing this, Grignir realized that his fate would be far less merciful than death to one such as he, who is used to roaming the countryside at will. A life of confinement would be more than his body and mind could stand up to. This type of life would be immeasurably worse than death. You know, honestly, I think it's kind of cool that we have a character who's not afraid to die.
Yeah, it's not too bad. But he was just talking earlier about how he was going to make sure to avoid death at all costs, so... inconsistent?
A little bit.
I shall never understand the ways of your twisted civilization. I simply defend my honor and am condemned to life confinement by a pig who sits on a royal ass wooing whores and knows nothing of the affairs of the land he imagines to rule.
Lectures Grignir?
Enough of this. Away with the slut before I lose my control.
Seeing the peril of his position, Grignir searched for an opening. Crushing Prudence to the sward, he plowed into the soldier at his left arm, taking a hold of his sword and bounding to the dais supporting the prince before the startled guards could regain their composure. Agathon leaped Grignir and his sire, but found a sword blade permeating the length of his ribs before he could loose his weapon. The counselor slumped to his knees as Grignir slid his crimson blade from Agathon's ribcage. The fat prince stood undulating in insurmountable fear before the edge of the fiery manned comet, his flabs of jellied blubber pulsating to and fro in ripples of flowing terror. Hey, if Grignir has red hair, does that make him the Red Comet?
He doesn't have the speed of the Red Comet.
Well, he moved 3 times faster than Agathon's.
Yeah, I guess. So, I guess I'll have to find a royalty-free Red Comet.
Where's your wisdom and power now, your majesty?
Growled Grignir. The prince went rigid as Grignir discerned him glazing over his shoulder. His lived to note the cause of the noble's attention, raised his sword over his head, and prepared to leash a vicious downward cleft, but fell short as the haft of a steel-rimmed pike clashed against his unguarded skull. Then blackness and solitude, silence enshrouding, and ever-peaceful rain reigned supreme.
Before me, Sarah. Before me as always. Ha, 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 ha.
Nobly cackled. End
That's
of
my name
chapter
from
2.
now on. Nobly.
Significantly longer than chapter 1.
And considering we're hitting the hour mark, I think we should probably actually call it here.
I don't know. Scroll down and check out how long chapter 3 and 3.5 are.
Yeah, okay.
This is one of the great parts of the Eye of Argon. Very inconsistent chapter lengths.
You're not kidding.
Oh, and actually, there's no dialogue in this next part. This is all up to me. Oh boy.
You want to do 3.5?
I got it. Consciousness returned to Grignir in stigmatic pulls as his mind gradually cleared of the cobwebs, cluttering its inner recesses. Yet the Stygian cloud of charcoal ebony remained.
That's a tautology.
An incompatible shield of blackness, enhanced by the bleak absence of sound.
Absence?
Absence. Grignir's muddled brain reeled from the shock of the blow he had received to the base of his skull. The events leading to his predicament were slow to filter back to him. He dickered with the motion that he was dead, and had descended or sunk, however it may be, to the shadowed land beyond the aperture of the grave.
Oh,
But
hang on. Dickered?
Dickered.
I think he meant to say dithered.
I think so. But rejected this
Screw.
hypothesis, a very barbarian word, when his
So is
memories
dithered.
sifted back within his grips. This was not the land of the dead. It was something infinitely more precarious than anything the grave could offer. Because in the land of the dead, Heck, or ain't it grand? I'm the overlord of the underworld, 'cause I hold horror's hand. We're gonna get copyright striked.
I don't know if your singing is good enough to get copyright striked. Oh.
Fair point. Death promised an infinity of peace, not the finite misery of an inactive life of confined torture, forever concealed from the life-bearing shafts of the beloved rising
Isn't Conan super dedicated to his god of war? What, Crom, whatever
Not
his name
really.
is?
He says, well, he's like, give me power to have victory this day, else damn you. So it's more like, give me what I want, or else I don't really like you anymore. He jumps back and forth.
The whole point is, Conan believed in gods, which means he probably did believe in an afterlife. But here we got this edgy atheist barbarian.
Look, Grignir is his own man. He can think however he wants. The orb that had been taken, that had been before taken for granted, yet now cherished above all else, to be forever refused further glimpses of the snow-capped summits of the land of his birth, never again to witness the thrill of plundering unexplored lands beyond the crest of a bleeding horizon, and perhaps worst of all, the denial to ever again encompass the lustful excitement of caressing the naked curves of the body of a trim, yawned wench. He's been in captivity for like 5 minutes, and he's already...
I was just about to say that, like, I'm just thinking, like, have you ever seen the movie Old Boy? I don't think you have, Shade, but, like, Old Boy begins with this drunken douchebag getting kidnapped and locked in a room. When we first encounter him, after he's woken up, we don't know necessarily how long he's been there when he's pleading with the guy to let him out. Even he, completely terrified, locked in this room with no way out, no escape, not even knowing how he got there. He wasn't this much of a whiny
Our hero, ladies and gentlemen. This was indeed one of the buried chasms of hell concealed within the inner depths of the palace's despised interior. A fearful ebony chamber devised to drive to the brinks of insanity the minds of the unfortunately condemned, through the inapt solitude of a limbo of listless, dreary silence.
So it's a traditional solitary confinement.
Chapter 3.5.
Why?
Why indeed? A tightly wrung elliptical circle or torches cast their wavering shafts prancing morbidly over the smooth surface of a rectangular, rigid altar. Expertly chiseled forms of grotesque gargoyles grants the oblique rim, protubrating the length of the grim orifice of death, staring forever ahead into nothingness in complete ignorance of the bloody rites enacted in their presence. Brown flaking stains decorated the golden surface of the ridge surrounding the altar, which banked
altar
to
altar of what?
You'll find out.
No, I mean, like, that's not the altar he wanted to use there.
Oh, yes. He needs altar with an A. Which banked to a small slit at the lower right-hand corner of the altar. Hey, you got it right. The slit stood above a crudely pounded pail, which had several silver mesh chalices hanging at its side. Dangling at the rim of golden mallet, the handle of which was engraved with images of twisted faces and grooved at its far end with slots designed for a snug hand grip. The head of the mallet was slightly larger than a clenched fist and shaped into a smooth oval mass. Encircling the marble altar was a congregation of leering shaman, eerie chants of a bygone age, originating unknown eons before the memory of man, were being uttered from the buried recesses of the acolytes' deep lings.
I know a song that gets on everybody's nerves, and this is how... Oh, continue.
Orange paint was smeared in generous globules over the tops of the priests' wrinkled, shaven scalps, while golden rings projected from the lobes of their pink ears. Ornate robes of luscious purple satin enclosed their bulging torsos, attached around their waists with silvered silk lashes latched with ebony buckles in the shape of a morose, misshaped skull. Dangling around their necks were oval-fashioned medallions held by thin gold chains, featuring in their centers blood-red rubies which resembled crimson fetish eyeballs. Cushioned their bare feet were plush red felt slippers with pointed golden spikes projecting from their tips. You know, he just spent a lot of time describing these acolytes, and I have no idea what they look like.
I cannot tell you. I'm sitting here, like, I'm trying to listen to you, trying to find where you are in the paragraph, because I kind of lost it. And I'm just like, what? What?
These are all words, and they all make sense, but, like, the way they're presented, it just, you lose yourself.
I'm reminded of, I don't know if any of the in the audience are aware of Brufa Alphabusa's If the Emperor Had Text-to-Speech device. Well, he's doing a spin-off podcast where they're going over various bits of lore from the 41st millennium. And he read, alongside his friends, the first Warhammer fiction book, Inquisitor. And he talks about just paragraph after paragraph of nonsense. That's just like, they walked across a carpeted room with golden decorations, but they describe it in such flowery terms that there's just nothing. It's just nothing. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out, like, I honestly cannot tell you what they're looking like.
Well, I'll tell you what makes this extra confusing. Grignir's not here. This is an entirely different scene.
Yeah, no, I understood. Like, they're describing this ritual room with a bunch of shamans, I should say. And it's just...
Let's see if we can figure out.
God.
Continuing on. Situated in front of the altar and directly adjacent to the copper pail.
Wait, there's a copper pail now?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
They described a silver pail.
Was a massive jade idol. A misshapen, hideous bust of the shaman's pagan deity. The shimmering green idol was placed in a sitting posture on an ornately carved golden throne, raised upon a round, ivory-plated dais. Bulging arms and webbed hands resting on the padded arms of the seat. Its head was entwined in the golden snake-like coils over its oblong ears, which tapered off to thin, hollow points. Its nose was a bulging triangular mass, sunken in at its sides with toe-gaping nostrils. Dramatic beneath the nostrils was a twisted, shaggy-lipped mouth, giving the impression of a slavering, sadistic grimace. I have no idea what this statue looks like.
I actually do. Alright, so let me see if I can simplify it a bit. Alright, so it's this weird god, right? It's sitting cross-legged on a fancy golden throne. It's got weird snake-like coils, like its hair he's got snake hair, weirdly shaped ears that end in long he's got elf ears, a really ugly big fat nose with giant nostrils, And then underneath the nose, he's got really fucked up lips that are twisted around and looking like a sadistic grimace.
Definitely sounds like a god I want to worship.
Did I clarify it a bit more for you?
That did help.
Okay. Because I could see what he was going for. Like this one, I could kind of follow.
At the foot of the heathen deity, a slender, pale-faced female, naked but for a golden jeweled harness enshrouding her huge outcropping breasts, supporting long silver laces which extended to her thigh, stood before the pearl-white field with noticeable shivers traveling up and down the length of her exquisitely molded body.
Has a single woman yet been described, had her clothes described?
Oh, you understand, this is the same woman.
This is the wench from the bar?
Yeah, we'll find out later, but this is the same woman.
Okay.
Why? I don't know.
Love interest?
I guess this doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
I mean, yeah, I guess not. Although, there were two women on the screen at the same time, and they did not talk about a man.
Fair, but they were in the middle of caressing him, and they were clearly concubines.
But they were not talking about a man, and that is what the Bechdel test is. They have to have two women, they have to have a conversation. Oh, actually, they have to have a conversation.
Yep. Her delicate lips trembled beneath soft, narrow hands as she attempted to conceal herself from the piercing stare of the ambivalent idol. Glaring directly down towards her was the stony, cycloptic face of the bloated deity.
Wait, it has only one eye?
Guess so. Really would have been nice to know that.
Yeah, with that really flowery description, you would have thought it would have described a one single... why did they split up the description of the oh...
Gaping from its single obling socket was scintillating. Many faceted...
No, that's right. That was right. Scintillating.
Many faceted scarlet emerald. A brilliant gem seeming to possess a life of its own. A priceless gleaming stone, capable of domineering the wealth of conquering empires. The Eye of Argon!
Dun, dun, dun! Holy crap.
End of chapter.
Shade, you were describing this as famous.
Infamous.
I could not necessarily understand it. And oh my god.
You could see...
I'm more confused than anything.
But you could kind of see how this became the room of fantasy nerds back in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely. But before we end this recording, I had a thought that we could throw in with these episodes.
Well, before we continue that, I just want to pair with you. As bad as this was, do you kind of see what I mean about this being the work of an amateur who is trying?
Oh yes, 100%. You can see him trying to replicate Lovecraft's super flowery prose,
or Robert Howard's, but they were friends.
It's just he is failing on every single aspect.
But it's not. It's more readable than My Immortal.
Yeah, well, My Immortal, I'm half convinced was a troll attempt. Mm-hmm. Well, I say attempt, but it succeeded. This, he was trying. My God, was he trying.
It's got soul.
It's got soul. It's terrible, but it's got soul. It's one of the reasons I love The Room, but I hate, Birdemic.
Mm-hmm. Birdemic was
The Room
lazy.
has soul. Birdemic is just lazy and it's boring.
It's like the difference between Ed Wood and what's his name? The German director that makes all the bad video game movies.
Oh, Uwe Boll.
Yeah, Uwe Boll. It's the difference between Uwe Boll and Ed Wood.
Yeah. So
Anyways,
as we come
your
to the end of
thought.
this episode, I was thinking, for writers out there, lessons to take away from these garbage fictions.
All right. Well, first off, use a thesaurus, but not too much.
The thesaurus will be your friend if you are not necessarily super knowledgeable about how to write. Like we were talking about earlier, you know, if you're having issues with trying to spice up a dialogue-heavy scene. However, and this is something I used to do when I was first learning, you know, when I was first starting to use a thesaurus in my early English classes. You do not need to go to the fanciest word in the dictionary in order to sound more intelligent. Because odds are, you're not using the word right. Like when you're describing a sword flashing out from behind a shield as riveted.
And if you're describing something, if you're doing a description-heavy moment, read it to someone else, and if it doesn't make sense to them, reword it.
Yeah. Like, I'm all for flowery prose. I'm not super big fan of it. You know, I'm not a big Lovecraft fan, partially because of the writing style. But I recognize you can do flowery prose well. And there are points in this story where he gets almost there. Like, I'm not super against some of those paragraphs. Like, aside from splitting up that description of the idol, I was okay with that paragraph. I got it, Shay didn't, but you don't need to overly explain.
And one final thing, at least for me. If you're writing narration, even if it's third-person omniscient narration or whatever, try to match the words you're using in your narration to how that character would think and act. If you have a barbarian, don't use hypothesis.
Yeah, if you're having, like, especially when you're describing what they're thinking of, like, do not be talking about the Purple Mountain's majesty when you're talking about who's apparently supposed to be a simple barbarian. That was just dumb.
And don't use hypothesis. Don't use words that obviously that character wouldn't use.
Confined torture, forever concealed from the life-bearing shafts of the beloved rising sun. No. And with that, I think we're almost an hour and a half into this episode, so we should probably call it here.
Oh, wait, I got one last one. Put more vowels in your character names.
Unless you're explicitly trying to go for, like, a guttural names.
Grignir.
And
Agaphin.
I don't, like, a lot of those feel like they might be real names. Like I said, like, Grignir was reminding me of Gungnir, like Norse names. But that kind of runs counter to the aesthetic that he was establishing with the hide weapons and the pith helmets and the horses, and like he's almost trying to go Norse with like a Viking type character, but then he's also adapting with like Mongols, and it's just no. So yeah, if you want your stuff to be readable, make sure it's consistent with the setting.
Anyways,
that's what I'd say.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this latest edition of Bad Fiction Monday, and we'll look into what we're going to read next. And if you want more Eye of Argon, let us know, and we will return to the series. Until next time.
Otherwise, if you want to hear us talk about something else, I don't know about Shade, but I have some plans for upcoming October. But if you want to listen to something else, let us know in the comments below. If you liked what you're hearing, let us give us a like, subscribe if you'd like. And, well, I guess from Shade.
Until next time, I've been Shaderaygun, your smooth narrator.
And I've been Zombo, your trying as hard as he can voice actor.
Have a good night, folks. Or morning. Or Monday in general.
Even though it won't help. It never helps.